Okay. And we're live. Welcome to Project 2 for the electronic illustration course. This is the digital line art project. So with this project, it is your goal to go in there and really figure out what good line work is all about. Got the D2L pulled up right here, and I just want to highlight that the first project, when you're going from an old sketch and then making it digital, you've got all the tools in the toolkit. You've got all the toys to play with in the sandbox. But on this project, we're taking all that stuff away from you and just giving you a couple materials to be able to work with to hopefully get you focusing on the line art, the overall composition, the contrast, the relationship of black and white, the compositional flow, and how you're moving the viewer's eye through the scene. And to be able to accomplish that, you are allowed to use these 5 things. So you can use black, only pure black. You can use white, only pure white. You can use gray, one gray. You get one gray. I recommend using a middle gray for these, right in the middle of your project. And you can use, of course, line, because it's the line art project. And then our dark horse of this project, pattern. All right. Don't sleep on the pattern here. And these print dots are what's going to allow you to be able to create different shades and values. So your job is to discover what happens when I put a gray pattern, using this gray color on the pattern as a color overlay and turning that pattern this gray color and putting it over white. What happens if I make the pattern white and put it over black? What happens if I make the pattern black and put it over gray? And you're going to start to get some secondary colors. And what can you create with that is the goal here. So within the D2L, you're going to see a couple different examples of previous projects and what makes them good and a write-up on that. One of the neat things that I go through and talk a lot about in here is film noir. Oh, what a term, what a term. If anyone's ever seen the classic movie before, Chinatown, film noir is really cool because it is all about the balance of black and white within your composition. How do those two things play off one another? It's not entirely black and white photography, but instead it relies on the contrast between the shadows and the light. And as we're looking through these images, that's what makes them so powerful and work so well. And there's a lot of good things to be able to draw from this. For this one, please, when you are working on this line art project, do not use the airbrush tool. We only want hard lines for this project. So I want you to do it with hard lines. I think you can use the texture brush, but it needs to be turned all the way up to 100 and no pressure sensitivity on it. And that's the rules. So it can be textured. It can have some static or noise to it, but that needs to be at 100%. We don't want a myriad of gradients or grays. You can create gradients with those 5 elements, but we're not going to be painting in gradients for this project. So please don't get that twisted. Don't get confused. This is another great example of, non-traditional shading on a character that really uses light in a powerful way. And that's what this project is all about, is how can we push that contrast of light and dark within our scene to be able to create a truly compelling image that draws the audience in and tells an illustrative narrative story. That's what we want here. We want something that isn't just, someone looking really cool in a portrait study, but we want something that tells a story about what's going on within this scene, with this couple, with whatever it is that you happen to have going on here, right? So if it's the train station, we want to give some indication to the audience of who who these characters are. Why are they at the train station in the middle of the night? Maybe they've got some luggage that gives an indication of where it is that they're heading to or where it is that they're going. I think that this train station shot is really, really beautiful. And don't neglect, Batman the animated series or any type of city scenes at night can work really good for this because so much of this is draped in silhouette and shadow. They're also always going to be making big use out of rim lighting. So I thought this one was really, really nice with the way that we've got the shots and the patterning and the repetition going on within the scene between the two characters. Really great camera shot. This one, absolutely lovely when you see the look on the fellow's face and the girl just blowing the smoke at him. What a wonderful bit of lighting that's going on with this character as the man, as the shadow wraps around into his jowls, into his jawline, and just the brightness that frames his dark eyes, I think is really, really solid and really nicely done. Good story going on with that one. All right. So as we push forward here tonight, I'm going to be showing you guys within Photoshop how to be able to get good line work. What constitutes as good line work within drawings? How do you know if your line work is good if no one's ever told you before? One of the ways that I like to think about it, it's almost like Chinese or Japanese calligraphy, in which when they're making the characters, there's a rhythm and a strength to the mark making that echoes either the energy of that character or the person who is creating it. Now, what generally within the design world, the design world loves to break its own rules, but in general, 98% of the work that you're going to see out there, if you're doing any kind of illustrative work commercially, or if you're working on any kind of television shows or any type of productions, they want great line work from you. That's going to mean a tapered edge. So it gets thinner and it gets thicker. It has a variation of width. The other catch is that you don't want it to be a wiggly, unsure line. You want those lines to be surgical with their precision and how it is that they move, right? They feel intentional. One of the easiest ways to be able to tell unintentional line work is when you've got something called hairy lines or lightning bolt lines. That's when the line is staggered and not quite connected in a clean way. And oftentimes this happens at the sketch stage when you are exploring the shapes and exploring the forms. But for final line work, this is not something that you want to occur. And the example that I'm going to do for you guys later this evening is going to have us doing lots of lines and blocking and how to be able to approach this project. The discussion post is up online for you guys to think about and look at, but let's check out some previous examples of this project. All righty. Cool. So here's some that I've completed running this course back in the past. And I think it's neat to be able to dissect these, and I'll show you exactly how I got into this final result here. And I'm not, trying to hold you back from understanding what the heck is going on here. But even as we start to zoom in, we can see that these lines are really very crisp and clean and intentional, and there's no fuzzy edges on them. They are hard lines as close in onto this as you can get. That's one of the things we're looking for this project. There we go. There's the line art for this one. Starting off, you guys are going to begin, where is it? With a sketch for what you want to do. And then from there, you're going to work from that sketch into final line art. Once you've got the final line art complete, you're going to begin the color blocking, just like we do with all our projects when we're working in digital illustration. And then from there, you're going to go in and you're going to start detailing this stuff out. So there's a big jump here between this first one and the last one. Last one looks much more completed, much more finished. Even though it's cool at this stage, it looks good, it's visually interesting, it's working. Oftentimes, if you find your piece working at this stage, you know it's going to work the more you begin to push forward with it. And here's a great example of having a white, solid white background and then putting those black print dots over the top of it to be able to create a different type of middle gray. Now, as I went into my final piece, I used that middle gray just to be that one middle gray that we have as a solid to be able to paint behind at the base of these trees just to give them a little bit of shading and a little bit of shadow within them. And that worked out really nicely for me in this piece. Let's look at another example. Yeah, so here's one that I did previously. This one for me was all about having to pay the price to be able to take the trip. You know, whenever you enter into something new or go on some type of voyage, you know, there's always a price you need to pay. And you know, is that contract too high? Is it, you know, are you willing to pay the cost to be able to get to where it is that you want to go? The theme I've run into many times within my own life. And generally, you know, as long as you're moving forward towards something, it's going to be the right call. It's going to be the right decision. Make those choices. This world rewards the bold. So here's another one that I did that's got, you know, I think some unique and expressive line work solutions in it. Up at the top around the little demon dude running the machine guy. We've got all kinds of really angry, expressive lines showing kind of the chaos of what this person's feeling and being overworked. But then there's some unique patterning and gradient and variation of line that's going on around this border on the outside. And this one is more, has graphic design elements to it. The background is not as complete, but it still works to be able to tell the narration and tell the story effectively for what I was looking for here. All right, so we're gonna get, so I showed you the print dots. If you're wondering how to be able to find print dots, oh buddy, all you gotta do is go to Google, type in print dots, and you got a few of them here. So we've got some that are horizontal, some that are diagonal or offset from one another. We've got a few other interesting print dot settings. Your only requirement is to make sure that these are 100% opaque. This works. We've got them being thicker and going into a gradient that it's creating. And you're welcome to download these, manipulate these in any type of way. They just need to remain one solid color. So this one is a little bit off gray. It's a little bit of a dark gray here, but it still counts. It still works because it's all one solid color. You are more than welcome to use polka dots to your heart's content for this project, if that is where your creative minds take you. But for me, I can usually get away with 99% of this project by using just this first file when you type in print dots on the top right hand side to be able to do everything that I need to do. And I'm going to show you guys how we do that. Now we're getting into development. As you start to move into this project, you might get an idea in your head. For myself, I like to lay down, you know, in the middle of the night. Sometimes if I wake up suddenly and my head is active and it's sort of swimming, I try to paint a picture inside my mind. And if you know, that picture is vivid enough, then I'll get up, grab my sketchbook, sometimes 3, 4 a.m. and do a sketch of it. And it doesn't matter how messy the sketch is at 3 or 4 a.m., at least I sort of solidified that idea in this world to be able to come back to in my waking hours. So that's what happened to me last night, continuing to move with the idea of change, moving forward. Maybe you hit a bump in the road. How can we dramatize that bump in the road in the most, impressive way? So this is me drawing super late at night. And the one thing I kept on wanting to sort of remind myself was that this character is supposed to be looking over their shoulder. They're putting on an oxygen mask. They're pulling the steering wheel for their car, their spaceship over to the right really hard so that shoulder goes up really high next to their face. There's a biocontainment unit. There's some kind of cryostasis unit directly behind the figure. The spaceship, this is my very rough hull here with no detailing on it whatsoever, has been ripped away. There's fire, there's explosions going on here. We've got a sci-fi interior to the ship. I promise you it will be there if I do this one. And then I want to do sort of a split frame. So this is sort of a long kind of shoebox rectangular painting where we see the character on the right-hand side and then the spaceship, the exterior shot on the left-hand side, so the audience understands just what the heck happened. So it almost becomes like a very short comic, two sequences, and it's telling the story of the character, how he's reacting, but what his focus is really on is keeping alive, whatever is in the cryostasis chamber. And as long as that's okay, the ship breaking down doesn't even matter. And this is a ship coming into a planet's orbit, and it's just hit a meteorite, and then we've got a bunch of other meteorites there behind it. And then I would do the flares and the sparks and the pieces of debris breaking off from the spaceship. It's a big sci-fi opera within two images, telling a very small story of something happening. And I like the feeling that this one gives. That when you're heading somewhere, you're trying to get to that next place, that next thing. Sometimes you hit bumps in the road, and but as long as you're protecting that thing that you really care about, it's still all right. Then it's all good. Let the wheels and the headlights fall off as long as you roll over the finish line with yourself intact. So then earlier in the day, I was thinking this would be fun to do. I don't think I'm going to go with this one. I always try to think about what I could show you guys within these demos that might be useful for you, because this line art project does open itself up well to doing characters' faces and figures. And I know that even at the collegiate university level, there can still be some issues with drawing figures, drawing armor, how to be able to shade these things effectively. And so I thought about doing that one. I wanted it to be this old queen pushing ahead with her lance while she's got a knight behind her holding a shield. That's just she's having one last charge, no matter what, for hell or high water. So that was really fun for me while I was sketching to slow down and think about each little section for how the crown might work, how the old lady's face might work. And that's the reason why I'm showing these to you guys. So when I'm drawing this type of stuff, I can feel myself start to get a little bit slow. So I saw this image at first and I was like, oh man, this is absolutely perfect. I really love the low angle. I like the rain. I think it's dramatic. I like, doing an alternative camera position for this project. And then I started thinking, okay, what else, is some stuff that I could show them and get them thinking about. But even while I'm doing this stuff, I'm always thinking, okay, I don't specialize in drawing like female knightly armor or battle armor. It's not one of my expertise. So I've run into situations in the past where I've tried to draw armor out of my own head, and I very quickly realized when I start looking at other people's stuff on the internet that there is a whole field of people in this world who live for fantasy armor on characters, and using, and referencing their armor designs is totally okay. They've been doing this a lot longer. They're a lot more versed in it, and relying on them for inspiration ain't no shame in that game. So then I can draw a reasonable old lady. Old people always look cool whenever you render them. And our faces, they've got so much of a story to tell. And so then I started looking online and just to see what I could find for different other wrinkle marks or old lady head shapes to be able to use. And this was, me going down the tunnel and image shopping for each section for whatever it is that I want to create. So I was pretty certain that I was going to do the cryostasis project. So I started looking up reference images, even though I can reasonably draw a cryostasis chamber. Doesn't seem all that complicated. But by going online and looking at how other artists have solved for these things, man, they've got some cool shapes and visual solutions that you would have never thought of before that can really help to inspire your own work and your painting. So for that exterior shot, I just want to get some back shots of how other artists have rendered the spaceships and the boosters within space, as well as sort of space explosions. This is sort of low planetary orbit. That seems to be where most of these space battles go on, unless you're in the 1970s, because now we know there are no explosions in space. That doesn't happen. But I thought this one was pretty cool. I like the back of the ship. It's an unusual shape that could inform my design in a fascinating way. There's one more in here. Where is it? Ah, here we go. Yeah, and then this one, right? Which this is getting into sort of a skateboard kind of grunge art a little bit with just the dirt and the chips and the little eccentric pin marks that are going on within it. But I like the overall shape of the interior. The space is kind of what I was looking for, and I can blow out a hole like this on the left-hand side, no problem. So every single time I'm going through and whatever it is that I'm creating, even while I'm in that very, very rough sketch stage, right? Here at this level, I'm going through and I'm going to look up reference images so that when I go start to refine my work for a second time, I've got a much clearer image in my head of what this can look like because I've done my visual research. Another cool space explosion going on there for reference. And again, this is going to be black and white and in line art, but they're still visually solving for some things that I need to figure out and get a clear picture of within my head. And so finally, right before this class got going this evening, I sketched out one more idea that I'm going to be doing for the example tonight. This one. And I really like this one an awful lot. So we've got a character taking a bath in a pool, and we've got a cave, sort of an underground cavernous cave that the character's taking a bath in. And yeah, if you look close enough, if any of you guys have ever been spelunking or been in a cave before, sometimes those underground formations can start to resemble things, similar to like looking at a cloud, right? If you're looking at a cloud, you say, oh, it looks like a bunny rabbit. Caves can do the same thing. And so making this pile of rocks actually resemble, a hand that's fallen and crumbled over, two hands, a little bit of a face up at the top. You got maybe something that resembles a heart that's fallen out, a brain. This creature has fallen, turned to stone, and crumbled long ago, and that's what this guy is bathing in front of or jumping in the pool in front of. I think it's a cool story for what is this place and to invite the audience in uh, to the time and the message for how this place began to exist, how long it's been there for. Is it a golem or something that crumbled long ago? Is it a statue that was turned to stone, or unfinished and became ruined from a cave-in? What happened within this place? I always like the idea of using the environment, using nature to be able to impact the audience. I think nature's got a lot of stories to tell us if you have got the eyes to see and the ears to listen. And Yeah, this is the one that I'm going to be using as the example this evening. So without further ado, let's get Photoshop open. Import this file. Also, I did look up reference images of caves and underwater grottos, as well as people swimming in the water, to be able to inform my design decisions with that a little bit further within this painting. When I tried to draw it out in my head, I couldn't remember all the pieces that show up um, are above water when you're floating. So, okay. All right, there's my reference image. So this time I'm importing my reference image directly into my shot. Let's see here, in the past. And I want to check my image size. So right now I'm at 96 DPI. I went to the image dropdown, image size, 96 DPI. I want to turn that up to 150. When I do that, my image right now is 16 by 21. Let's bring that up to 32. Cool. All right, so we got it at 32, and what I'm going to do next here is just Control C, Control V. So Control C, Control Shift V to be able to paste in place. I'm going to create my base layer because I've still got a sketch to go through and make on this. And the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to size up that sketch. Because this is just my sketch. This is just getting me started here. We've got kind of an awkward scale for this painting, but I really want the face to be all the way up at the top. And I don't think that we're in Photoshop now. I can paint on the screen and show you what I'm thinking. Brush bigger, my opacity up, and we're off to the races. I don't think that this space down here is really helping my scene too much. I think it was smart to crop this where I did. So we've got, and I like, one of the hands is enough. So let's do the same thing that we did with the first sketch when I was setting that up on the old sketch digital. Where are our heat points? What do we want the audience to focus on within this painting? Something I always like to ask myself when if I'm going to develop this into a final painting and illustration. So I've got my ideas in here. The face is one thing, but we'll give these numbers for when I want them to look at things. So the first thing I want people to see is this character. All right, so that's number one. That's the first spot that I want their face to go to. And then after that, as they start to sort of wander through the cavern and get up to here, because everyone you can spot a face in a cloud or in a tree or anywhere, 3 miles away. If you've ever been in a bath with like marble tiling or something, or a shower, you use that same shower every single day, you'll see, you might start to see a face that's always staring back at you there. All right. Number two. So I want their eyes kind of wander over to the hand and then down a little bit. Okay. Then from there, this area, I do want it to have some visual interest. And then I want them to see number three. Okay, so that's sort of the movement that I want. I want them to look this way, pulling their eyes with the lines and the lighting that I'm doing up until this noisy area so that there's a little bit of tension visually, a little bit of visual noise between the person in the water and then number three up there at the top. And how can I make the person in the water stand out the most? How can I make the hand pop out second? And then how can I make the visual noise be the third thing that you see? And then as you start to get all the way up to the top of the picture, to mess with the viewer's perception, if they look a little bit deeper into the painting, they'll get a little bit of an extra message or a little bit more of the story told to them. Sometimes I see folks when they're doing this, man, they'll be like, "Oh, this character, they're a 3,000-year-old wizard, and they're a master level 99 sorcerer, and you can tell because they've got this grimoire. The grimoire is like 500 years old and contains the souls of like 500, former demons that they captured in Anaheim, New Mexico." And then you see the painting, and the wizard is like, God, the wizard will be like this big on the painting with their little hat. And then they're standing there, and then they've got their little tiny book, and they've got this big story that they want to tell that's all about this wizard, right? And this wizard's backstory. But visually, they haven't given themselves enough real estate within the painting for anybody, unless you have a magnifying glass, to go in and actually notice this, 500-year-old grimoire that this wizard has got tucked underneath their arm. And, think about the story that you're telling, what kind of weight and importance, how are you using camera angles to be able to emphasize the importance that you want people to focus on within your paintings. It's really important, you guys. Okay, now let's get into some of the line art stuff. So I've got my sketch, I've got a gray background within this painting. Now's a good time, since I've got my canvas set up, to go ahead and save this. It's a great project to really do some figure references and look at comic book inkers as well. So I'm going to turn my line art way the heck down here. And we're going to do something a little bit different for this project. I'm going to start dropping in my gutter. So this is something that you haven't really seen me do before, but I'm taking the crop tool and pulling it out to the side. From there, just so that you can visually see it. Oh, not fuchsia, it's pink. We're gonna go with black, and I'm gonna start from on top of my background layer, placing in some of those reference images. So I've got my sketch in here. I've got this guy swimming. I can actually see this thing again. I think he works the best. I like him a lot. Scale him up. Edit, transform, flip horizontal. Top of the sketch. Yeah, I like that a little bit better than what I had before. His legs look a little bit short, so we might elongate those more, but yeah, it's pretty good positioning. That's a lot better than the twiggly sketch that I had in there before, so I'm going to leave it. Uh, no, because remember, this sketch is doing a good job of pointing the viewers towards what it is I want them to look at and that movement that I have going on within the piece. Whereas this guy got some good indications, some good stuff going on there, but it doesn't move our eyes as well as I want the sketch that I have. So yeah, we're gonna drop him up there and just use him as a reference. I was about to almost trace over him, but let's not do that. And then I've got some cave references in here. for different parts of the cave that my brain might not think of. I had a good time when I was dreaming this idea up of thinking of the time and how, there should probably be some crevice in the rock where this pool over millions of years of drainage down into this cavern became a little bit higher, a little bit wider, a little bit smaller, and created an uneven result within the rock. But I like this one a lot because it really does a nice job of showing the boulders and this it's like volcanic rock on the way in, or at least limestone, into the cave, and that's something that I can do with my ground. What else do I have? This one was pretty cool. I liked the way that the grotto is lit. Zoom out. And the way that it fades into the blackness up there in the top. Cool. So next up, I'm going to merge all three of these and I'm going to desaturate them. Since we are not working with color within this project, we are black, white, and one middle gray, as well as line art and pattern. Oh yeah, I want to show you guys one more pattern file that I've used in the past on this. This one. So it's called PNG Clip Art Stained Grunge Texture. These grunge textures, don't sleep on them. They can be pretty darn useful. So you don't have to paint every single piece of this if you're trying to apply grunge to something or some kind of marks. And notice that there is no white going along around the sides of this. This is completely black, and that's what I ended up using was the black, or inversing it and turning it all white, or doing a color overlay to be able to turn it into a gray shape. So let's get in and let's start doing some line art. So caves are cool, right? Want to make sure that I'm staying on complete black for this. And I've got my regular brush turned on right now, just the hard round brush. And within Photoshop, we're going to turn off this pressure sensitivity, if you're using a newer version of Photoshop, right next to the opacity. So that way, when I draw, it stays 100% all the time. This took me a while to be able to figure out. I missed the point when they updated this. So with that little, it looks kind of like a globe with a pencil on it or something. If you press really lightly, then your opacity isn't going to be all the way. You can see through. You can see the underlying lines underneath there. But the harder you press down, the darker it becomes, which is nice because it mimics a marker or a Bic pen or something like that. We don't want that to happen on this project. Turn it off. So got my hard edge brush, hard round brush. I'm going to turn off the pressure sensitivity for the opacity. I want to turn up my smoothing to 25%. Within my brush setup, I've just got the pressure brush turned on. And now I'm in a pretty good position to go in here and start improving and moving towards the final line for this project. Now, a cave. How hard could it be to be able to get things to be able to work on a cave? Well, we've still got to consider depth, and I still want to build this thing up within various layers with the way that I'm going to be building this. So I'm going to start, just like all of my projects, all the way at the very back. And when I'm doing so this is moving from the sketch into the final line art, because the cave is pretty abstracted. And what I'm really focused on here is just making this a meditation on creating really strong shapes and forms. So what's going to make this sing and make this feel professional and finished is the types of shapes that I'm creating, and creating a rhythm to the shape language. You'll see what I mean, hopefully, here in a minute. So I'm going to start at the very back. I'm going in medium close. I'm not down to the pixel. I'm sort of, if you can see on my um, navigator for my canvas, I'm zoomed in sort of ×2 on this thing. So still working fairly far back, but I trust my pen. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start creating some lines. And the way that I'm creating these lines is I'm going in, I'm sort of slowly pushing my pen where I want the line to start, pressing down hard, and I'm going fast, and then slow, and fast again. And then as I get to the end, I'm sort of swooping my pencil up off the canvas. What that does is creates a really nice taper at the end of my line. So you can see how this goes from thick to tapered, and all of this feels really intentional with the way that I'm creating it. There's no wiggles along the way, and then the taper, there's no hairy lines to speak of. These are nice, clean, solid line marks that I'm creating right here. And this is what's going to make your line art start to sing and make it really, really work. I'm going fast and then slow. Another thing that starting illustrators mess up a lot, I wish they didn't, but they do, is when they go in, they start painting really, really thick. So they don't have the weighted brush on, and all their lines end up becoming the same thickness, but then their mark is like huge. They're like drawing like this. It's almost like having a big flat Sharpie. And that really takes away your space as an artist and as a creative. So I highly recommend that you guys start working. This is still fairly thick. A lot of the anime that you'll see, or television animation, has got even thinner lines on the characters than this. But work with thinner line. Get away from using those big thick lines. The big thick lines certainly have got a time and place, but I would say the current trend in media right now is to be able to have thinner lines. All right, and just like an etch a sketch, I'm going through and starting to set myself up to be able to fill in some of these pieces. Yep. That one just a little bit more textured. So keep in mind, I can always go back and make these things darker later on. And now I'm starting to think about the big shapes. I've got a lot of line work here. I've got a lot of different options from what my hand created originally. I want to break up some of these big slabs every now and again. other forms. All right. Cool. So if I did this right, I should have a closed line form. I'm just looking real quick. If you ever worked in Toon Boom Harmony, you'll end up scouring your paintings trying to figure out where did I leave a little bit of a gap. And that's your job for this project is to get in close on these paintings, these illustrations, figure out where I left something open. Do Golly. All right, I'm gonna have to fill that one in later. But that's giving me a good start. Now I'm gonna go through and continue working my line work. So this line work becomes the framework for the rest of the painting. I'm gonna need to go back and there's gonna be a lot of blocking, a lot of black that I'm gonna end up putting into this thing. And I'm gonna be working some areas, developing other sections, and just working my way through this. As you get closer to the front, you can start doing thicker line work. Not a bad idea. By using the thin lines off in the distance, that is going to push them further back, and then the thicker lines are going to read to your audience as being closer in, closer towards the front. So you, even with just line work, you can create things that push backwards and forwards. Done this project in a while, so I can not I'll get in the headspace. I'll get there of being able to fill an actual shape. All right, so this is my first filled section or filled shape that I'm going to create here. This is me sort of starting to chisel in the black. So filling it in, I've got the lasso tool selected. It's a closed shape. I'm going to select on the inside, go to select, modify, expand. And now we've got it in black. So by expanding it 2 pixels, that ensures that I do not get that little stitching line. You can see it there. That's exactly what I did not want to occur by filling this in with 2 pixels. Let's go in here. Now hit it twice, and now no more little pixel lines, so things are nice and clean. All right, we're starting to make some big choices. That's our first big decision with this painting. So I've got some of my shape that's starting to fill out. I can, I'm likely going to go back in here with the gray or the pattern, the print dots, and add some more texture so that it dissipates up so that it's not quite such a hard edge. And that's something I want to show you guys within this demo tonight as well, is how I use those print dots within the piece and actually do some shading on something. So let's get one of my rocks in here and shaded. Here's another section. Oh my goodness. All right. It's going to be totally black. Select, modify, expand, color it in. Cool. So my goal, what I think I'm going to do visually is to be able to make number one stand out. The pool is mostly going to be white. It's going to be, seems to be the electronic illustration runs of glowing water in 2025. But yeah, the water is going to be bright. And then that's gonna help us create the contrast through the rest of the scene. Some of these areas I'm going to start pulling back in just, if you're using an ink brush, and just trying to be nice and expressive but clean with the mark making that I'm working at. So now I'm pulled all the way back on this thing because I know some of these areas I want to be dark. Working from the dark sections. This is another one of the fallen hands. This painting made of rocks. Brought to you by Stone. Behind there, likely don't need anything shaded, but want it to be different boulders. You can also make the lines nice and thin where things are brighter. So if we got a glowing pool, the lines are going to get nice and thin right around there. I love painting rocks. All right. Cool. So that's working pretty well. We've got this big column over here on the right-hand side that's supposed to represent the forearm. Intentionally making the edge a little bit crumbled, a little bit uneven. That doesn't come off as like a carved pillar. Trying to keep my lines confident, moving around the edge, but we're starting to get a good first pass on this line work. Starting to block in some shapes and some forms. Got a big crack up under here. There we go. And this first step can go pretty quickly. Got a pretty good idea of how I want my shadows, and this is, for some of you guys, it's going to work better just to be able to do the line work first and then fill out, experiment on other layers with closed shapes for what parts you want to be black. And this project definitely has got a big exploration element to it. All of this stuff over here that I'm painting is going to fall back a lot. That's a vine. Cool. So that's looking pretty good there. Let's go in and I want to shade this arm piece that I'm working on right now, just to be able to show y'all what the next steps look like, of course. Alrighty. Cool. Find the holes. There we go. Here we go. So that's starting to get a little bit messy in some of these areas. You can go in and clean it up with either your eraser or your brush to be able to make it look a little bit nicer, a little bit cleaner. This will make a difference. Some of those lines are not quite looking refined and nice. It's like a little shrimp. But yeah, some of this stuff feels like working with a Japanese ink brush. Some of these patterns that I'm creating in here have got a really good energy and shape and line to them. And that is exactly what we're looking for on this project. All right, so there we go. I've got this section that I want to go in and shade. So I'm going to go to Select, Modify, Expand. Underneath my layer, I've got one gray to rule them all. Middle gray is okay. I like going just a little bit darker with the gray, but you got to commit to that gray color. All right, so now we've got our gray filled in. From here, I can select this. Let me go back over and grab this guy. Copy image from Google for my print dots. I'm gonna paste them in there. And in the past, I've done this project where the dots are changing sizes. As I've continued to do this project, I kind of like to keep them the same size. So I'm going to go to Select, Color Range, selecting the white, hitting X, and now I've got just my black dots there. Save that little card for later if I want it. And this is my base one to come back to. So this way my scale always stays the same size. And just to make sure that these are black and they don't have any white around the outside of them, I'm going to double click, color overlay, black, and right click and go to rasterize layer style. So now those little dots are 100% black. My previous one. And so what I'm going to do next here is I am going to start duplicating my layer. Duplicate layer. And this keeps with the rules, right? So we've got a black that is 100% black. It just happens to be a lot of dots. And yeah, we could go through and we could spend 2 days drawing a bunch of dots. There's a famous older Asian woman who got famous for painting a lot of dots. And we don't want to step on her terrain, so we're not going to spend as much time doing that. Just going to get to painting the idea that we want. Watch out when you're making something like this. Sometimes they cannot be even. There we go. And I'm just copying and pasting. So using my marquee selection, Control C, Control Shift V, and making it larger and larger. There is a way to be able to make patterns quickly within Photoshop. I don't know how to do it. And this way takes about as long as it would for me to look it up on Google. There we go. I just remember it's still not convenient to be able to pattern something. So watch out for any of those lines that are going through, but edit, transform, vertical. This is how they used to shape things during the 1970s on those old green and black computers. It's a total lie. It's not true. I made that up. All right. So I'm going to call this one full pattern, turn it blue, and I'm going to duplicate it again. All right, turn off the visibility, give our first one a different color. So from here, what I can do is I can go in and I can start erasing. So we're going to use a subtractive method with this pattern. Let's do it a little, make this easier to see at the end. So I'm going to hold down Control, select my fully color blocked section, Control C, Control V, turn off that full patterning. And now, just that quickly, by hitting Control X from the previous layer, let me do that again. That was too fast. Okay. So here's the magic to get your pattern on a shape. First thing I'm going to do is I've got a fill color, made my fill shape. I'm going to hold down Control, select the icon. After I select the icon, I've got my marquee selection. I'm going to go up to my full pattern. I'm going to hit Control C, Control Shift V, and now I can turn off that previous pattern layer underneath it, and I've got just the pasted in place version of my pattern. I hope that makes sense for you. And now we're off to the races. We can really start using the subtractive method at this point. And start thinking about where some highlights might hit on this hand. If the pool is glowing, start describing the shape of those rocks that are going to be highlighted, and start creating a gradient that moves back a little bit further. So there's the top of the hand. It's a crack. There we go. Now I've got some shading, but for the most part, and I'm just using the eraser tool on 100%. Nope, I'm using the fuzzy brush. Shame on me. I want the hard brush on the eraser as well. Start creating some highlights. Turning on the pressure sensitivity on the eraser as well, so that I'm getting a thicker and a thinner line. All right. There we go. As we start to zoom back, we can see that we're starting to get some cool patterning that is a third grade color by using pure black. Now, what I would do when I'm going into my full shaded section, I would go through, do all my black first on the scene, get all my line work in there, and then start applying the grays, and then start applying the patterning. And just like we saw with this one, right? Here's the steps. So you have your sketch, finish your line art, get that looking good and nice the way that you want it to. Nice and clean all the way down, however small this stuff is within the total shot. Then you're going to block your colors, your black, your white, your gray on their various layers. Maybe some of the light pattern work for where you know you want it to be. And if it's working at that scale, then you go in and then you start detailing, right? I'm jumping ahead with the way that I'm showing you guys just so that I can show you the techniques for how to be able to do this and to be able to approach this project. And then your last piece that you have of the puzzle is white. So if you're leaving grit or anything within here, make sure that you are doing it on purpose. So likely even these white highlights are going to need some type of gray patterning over the top of them to be able to tone them down a little bit. I just want to show you guys what the process looks like. So now I'm going a lot slower with those white highlights because I'm painting in smaller spaces. That doesn't mean that I'm zooming all the way in and working like someone who has a bug collection. But I want to make sure that these lines, as well as those big black lines, have got some interest and some energetic forms to them. And if they're thinking about and considering the shapes within this piece. So now as we start to zoom back here, we can see that really nice gradient that we're creating. Shapes that we're making. Maybe there's just a few more little highlights here that are starting to dissipate as it moves further back away. From the glowing pool. You can see how well these are starting to look like rocks, and finding a unique but well-polished balance between being rocks and a hand and stylized, but still feeling polished and finished with the way that I'm approaching this design. So that's looking pretty cool. And when I start to work my way through the rest of the piece like this, it should, with any luck, turn out pretty rad looking at the very end. So thank you so much for checking out this first demo. I hope this gets you excited for where you can head with this project. I'm excited to see where this painting is going to go. So stay tuned, and till next time, stay creative.